Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will reach a high of 91.8 degrees Fahrenheit, with the low dropping to 65.9 degrees. It is certainly a day to stay cool, so be sure to stay hydrated and seek out shade or air conditioning if your plans take you outdoors. Coming up on Alex's News, we will dive into China's strategies for countering the growing presence of Starlink in the global satellite landscape, exploring what this could mean for the future of space communications. We will also examine the reasons behind California's appellate court upholding certain building fees, and what that decision means for development and housing in the state. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We begin this morning with a developing story that has significant implications for international relations and the future of aerospace. We're talking about Elon Musk's Starlink satellite constellation and the escalating strategic competition surrounding it. For more on this, we turn to our expert reporter, Ethan. Ethan, it seems China views Starlink as a rather potent threat. Can you explain why?
Grace, that's absolutely right. According to extensive reporting from the Asahi Shimbun and 9 News Australia, both citing the Associated Press, Chinese government and military scientists see Starlink as a, quote, high risk, end quote. Beijing perceives it as a potent threat primarily due to its close ties to the U.S. intelligence and defense establishment, its rapidly growing global footprint, and its demonstrated military utility.
Military utility? How so?
Well, Chinese researchers view Starlink as a multifaceted and severe threat. A turning point was the 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As the Asahi Shimbun and the Jefferson City News Tribune via the Associated Press reported, this conflict showcased Starlink's significant battlefield advantages for communications and drone operations for the Ukrainian military. This real-world application truly underscored Starlink's potential for military use by adversaries and for spying, amplifying Chinese anxieties. In fact, nearly all 64 Chinese papers reviewed on Starlink were published after that conflict began.
That makes sense. So China is clearly worried. What kind of countermeasures are they proposing to deal with Starlink? Are they looking to put a cosmic wrench in its gears?
They certainly are, Grace. Chinese government and military scientists have published dozens of papers outlining various methods, ranging from destructive, quote, hard kill, end quote, to disruptive, quote, soft kill, end quote, approaches. For instance, according to the Jefferson City News Tribune, some proposals include, quote, stealth submarines fitted with space shooting lasers, end quote, powerful enough to burn Starlink equipment. There are also ideas for custom-built, quote, hunter, end quote, satellites, armed with ion thrusters or corrosive materials to damage Starlink's solar panels or batteries.
Lasers from submarines. That sounds like something out of a spy movie. What about less destructive methods?
Indeed, it's a high-stakes game of celestial chess. On the, quote, soft kill, end quote, side, which is less about destruction and more about disruption, there are proposals for supply chain sabotage, targeting Starlink's extensive network of over 140 first-tier suppliers. Also, electronic warfare and cyber attacks are extensively researched, aiming to jam or spoof Starlink's radio frequency signals or even hijack satellites. And according to reporting from barchart.com and timescolonist.com, some studies even explored detonating a large nuclear weapon at the edge of space to disable satellites, though this would create immense, indiscriminate debris.
That's quite a spectrum of strategies. But considering Starlink's sheer number of satellites, wouldn't, quote, hard kill, end quote, methods be incredibly difficult and expensive to sustain?
You hit the nail on the head, Grace. OrbitalToday.com highlights that Starlink has over 8,000 active satellites, with tens of thousands more planned. A sustained, quote, hard kill, end quote, offensive would be economically unsustainable, as the cost per kill would likely far exceed SpaceX's cost to replace a satellite. Moreover, as demonstrated by China's own 2007 anti-satellite test, such actions create hazardous space debris, potentially leading to the Kessler syndrome, which could render entire orbital altitudes unusable. Therefore, Chinese strategists are increasingly focusing on the less escalatory and more cost-effective "soft kill" methods, as they don't create debris and are often temporary.
Fascinating. So while they're exploring these countermeasures, is China also looking to compete in the satellite internet market itself?
Absolutely. While contemplating these offensive strategies, China is also proactively developing its own large-scale satellite constellations. This is a constructive approach and a strategic counter to Starlink. For example, China's SatNet, or Guowang, established in 2021, has launched 60 of a planned 13,000 satellites with military capabilities, as reported by the Asahi Shimbun. Then there's Qianfan, or Thousand Sails, which is backed by the Shanghai government and has launched approximately 90 of some 15,000 planned satellites. Qianfan is actively securing international deals, particularly in nations within China's Belt and Road Initiative, with business negotiations reportedly underway with over 30 countries.
It sounds like a new space race, not just for military dominance, but for market share. Who are some of these international partners?
They're certainly not shy about casting a wide net. A significant memorandum of understanding was signed with Brazil's state-owned telecommunications firm, Telebras, to provide satellite internet to remote areas, with commercial services anticipated to begin in 2026. This is seen as Brazil's move to diversify providers given Elon Musk's public dispute with a Brazilian judge, as reported by PCMag.com and SCMP.com. Mesat, Malaysia's primary satellite solutions provider, also signed an MOU with Qianfan. Additionally, Qianfan is targeting customers in Kazakhstan, Oman, Uzbekistan, and aims to expand across Africa.
It's clear that space is becoming an increasingly contested domain. Ethan, thank you for breaking down this complex and evolving situation for us. That's our first story for today.
My pleasure, Grace.
We'll be right back with more news after this short break. Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to a significant legal development out of California, with major implications for housing development and infrastructure funding across the state. Joining us this morning is our legal reporter, Chloe, who has been following the twists and turns of the Sheets versus El Dorado County case. Chloe, for those who might not have been following, can you set the stage for us?
Grace, absolutely. This complex legal battle started in 2016 when George Sheets, a property owner in El Dorado County, was charged a $23,420 traffic mitigation fee to build a single home. Sheets, backed by the Pacific Legal Foundation, challenged this fee, arguing the county needed to prove the charge directly related to his new home's impact on local roads. He believed it was an unconstitutional taking of his private property.
And this case eventually landed on the doorstep of the U.S. Supreme Court, didn't it? What was their ruling?
It certainly did, Grace. In April 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a unanimous ruling that, in principle, sided with Sheets. As reported by Cal Matters, the Supreme Court ruled that local governments must justify their impact fees. This extended the essential nexus and rough proportionality tests established in earlier precedents to legislatively imposed fees.
Essential nexus and rough proportionality. Can you briefly explain what those legal terms mean for our viewers?
Of course, Grace. The essential nexus means a direct link must exist between the government's demand, like a fee, and the problem your development creates. Rough proportionality means the fee has to be reasonably related to the actual impact your project has. This ruling was initially seen as a potential major shift for property rights advocates, but the court didn't specify how detailed that justification had to be, sending the case back to lower courts.
So, after the U.S. Supreme Court sent it back, what happened just 3 days ago, on Tuesday, July 29, 2025, in the California appellate court? Did they pump the brakes on these potentially lower fees? Or did they allow the developer to zoom ahead?
Well, Grace, this is where the state court truly pumped the brakes on that interpretation. A 3-judge panel at California's 3rd Appellate District revisited the Sheets case. As widely reported by Cal Matters and confirmed by legal sources like Justia.com and Courthouse News Service, the state appellate court ruled that El Dorado County's fee, quote, passed muster, end quote. The court found the county used a valid method for imposing the fee and, quote, established a reasonable relationship between the fee charged and the projected burdens. This decision significantly eased worries for local governments, while disappointing construction advocates.
So, if the U.S. Supreme Court said fees need justification, how did the state appellate court uphold El Dorado County's fee? Did they say an individual analysis for every home wasn't necessary?
Precisely, Grace. The California 3rd Appellate District determined that while legislatively enacted fees must meet heightened scrutiny, it doesn't necessitate an individualized impact analysis for every single development. Instead, the court affirmed that a reasonable, class-based formula could satisfy the, quote, rough proportionality test. As reported by Courthouse News Service, they found an essential nexus existed and the fee was roughly proportional to traffic impacts.
Can you give us a quick insight into El Dorado County's class-based formula that the court approved?
Certainly. El Dorado County's methodology is based on a comprehensive traffic impact fee program and a nexus study, as detailed by legal analyses from firms like Rutan and Tucker, LLP. This approach forecasts growth, identifies necessary infrastructure, and allocates costs to new development based on its projected share of future traffic, using equivalent dwelling units. This class-based formulaic approach, supported by their detailed study, was deemed constitutionally adequate.
Chloe, California is notorious for high development costs, contributing to our housing crisis. How do these fees stack up, and why do counties rely so heavily on them?
Grace, you're hitting the nail on the head. Locally imposed impact fees in California are exceptionally high, nearly 3 times the national average, according to a 2015 UC Berkeley report cited by CalMatters. These fees are crucial for funding public infrastructure, like roads, which can cost millions per mile, as per the Federal Highway Administration. Counties levy these fees to ensure new development contributes its proportional fair share to the costs of necessary transportation improvements, especially since Proposition 13 limits property tax revenue for California's local governments.
So is this the final word on the Sheets case? Or is this legal saga still on the road?
It might not be over yet, Grace. Brian Hodges, the attorney for George Sheets, is still considering an appeal to the California Supreme Court, though as of today, August 1, 2025, there's no public record of such an appeal having been formally filed. Despite this specific loss, Hodges remarked, quote, "We won the war but lost the battle," end quote. He suggests the U.S. Supreme Court's original ruling still places other local requirements on builders in potential legal jeopardy. This ongoing legal back and forth highlights the persistent tension between local governments' funding needs and private property rights, making the path to addressing California's housing crisis a bumpy one.
Chloe, that was an incredibly detailed and clear explanation of a truly complex legal issue with far-reaching consequences. Thank you for making that so understandable for our viewers.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In a move that is set to redraw the map of global commerce, the White House has announced a sweeping new set of tariffs on goods from nearly 70 countries and the 27-member European Union. The executive order, scheduled to take effect on August 7th, is being touted as a key part of the administration's America First policy. The new structure imposes a baseline tariff of 10% on all nations not otherwise specified, with higher rates for countries holding a trade deficit with the U.S. Some countries will be taxed with paying significantly more. Syria faces the highest rate at 41%, with Laos and Myanmar at 40%. Switzerland was hit with a surprise 39% tariff after last-minute negotiations failed, a move that shocked the markets. South Africa will see a 30% duty, which sent its currency, the rand, to a 2-month low. Even close allies weren't spared, with Canada facing a tariff hike to 35% over what the White House called inaction and retaliation on trade. The decision has sent ripples through global financial markets, with stocks in Europe and Asia falling on the news. Meanwhile, a diplomatic firestorm is brewing between the U.S. and Brazil. Washington has imposed sanctions on Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandra de Moraes, who is presiding over the criminal case against former President Jair Bolsonaro. The U.S. Treasury Department accused the justice of engaging in censorship and politicized prosecutions. The move freezes any U.S. assets de Moraes may have. The Brazilian government condemned the sanctions as interference, while President Trump has vocally supported his ally Bolsonaro, even threatening 50% tariffs on Brazil linked to the case. This follows an order from Justice de Moraes for Bolsonaro to wear an ankle monitor, deeming him a flight risk. In El Salvador, the legislature has approved constitutional reforms that pave the way for indefinite presidential re-election. The move, driven by President Nayib Bukele's party, also extends the presidential term from 5 to 6 years and eliminates the need for runoff elections. It seems President Bukele is looking to electrify his hold on power for the long term. Critics have blasted the fast-tracked vote as the, quote, death of democracy and a step toward dictatorship, while supporters say it empowers the people. Back in the U.S., a federal judge in San Francisco is pumping the brakes on the Trump administration's plan to end temporary protected status, or TPS, for roughly 60,000 immigrants from Honduras, Nepal, and Nicaragua. The judge issued a sharp ruling, stating the decision appeared to be based on a, quote, preordained determination, rather than an objective review of conditions in those countries. The ruling provides a temporary reprieve for thousands who have lived and worked legally in the U.S. for years, in some cases for over 2 decades. And finally, in the last frontier, a budget crisis is leaving many schools out in the cold. Alaska is facing a nearly $800 million price tag to fix its crumbling school buildings, particularly in rural areas. However, lawmakers allocated only $40 million for the problem, and Governor Mike Dunleavy then vetoed more than 2/3 of that. The crisis stems from decades of over-reliance on dwindling oil revenues, leaving the state with what the governor called heartbreaking conditions, and, in his words, not enough money to pay for all of our obligations. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.